I'm going to begin, Matt. I mean, this movie, I mean, it's really a war film. It really studies our sort of psyche and blurs the line between kind of good and evil. I mean, is that what you really approach this as, just a real kind of study of the notion of war?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what's exciting about the Apes franchise for me, and specifically this franchise, in which the through line, all the films are very different. Like Rise is different from Dawn, and Dawn is different from War. And this is a war from the thing that's common, that has in common with all the other films, is that through line of Caesar and the strange, uncanny experience of going to these movies, and why I think people are drawn to them, is that you get to go to the movies and become an ape, right? The movies are about empathy, and we're really holding a mirror up to ourselves by looking into the faces of these apes and recognizing ourselves. And the idea was to look at what the extremes of our behavior create in a wartime situation, and the idea of us grappling with the sort of our darker instincts.
Because I guess an ape's approach to sort of conflict is so primitive and almost it's sort of animalistic. So, I mean, do you think that's a catalyst in itself to explore our own relationship then with
Well, conflict? It is and it isn't, because actually Caesar is the most empathic character in the whole series. He has the bedrock of his character is that he's like a bridge between the species, in that he was raised as a human, so he's part human, but he's also an outsider because he's an ape. And he is part ape because he is an ape, but he wasn't raised like them. So he has this ability to connect emotionally to both species. And this war story is really about how he is challenged in ways that cause him for the first time to lose his empathy. But he's actually in a way a lot less primitive than some of the humans who are so desperate. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we are apes, right? The thing that we forget is that we're animals. It's we come and we do, interviews to go over Twitter and Skype and all, it's like all of this stuff removes us from the essence of our nature. And, all you have to do is look at the world and see what's going on right now, and you can see us grappling with our nature and, the good and bad of our animal sides.
I was watching a movie, and about sort of, say, a third of the way through, I thought I can see real Apocalypse Now influences on this film.
Absolutely.
And then it says Ape Apocalypse Now on the wall, and I was like, I knew it. But I thought that before it said that.
Yeah.
But I mean, just how big an influence was that movie?
Oh, it was a big one. I mean, Mark Bomback and I, when we sat down to write the script, we watched all the Planet of the Apes movies. We watched a lot of actually biblical epics. But as far as war movies, Apocalypse Now had a big influence in how we developed the story, but so did another Pierre Boulle story, which is a David Lean movie, Bridge on the River Kwai. The Great Escape was a big war movie that we watched. I mean, the thing about it is that the war that's important in our story is not just the spectacle, because what we found was that on all the war movies that we gravitated to, it wasn't just the conflict between the armies that mattered. It was the internal conflicts. It was, in this story, the war that is the greatest war is the war within Caesar. He is pushed to a place that he's never been in, and he has to fight to maintain the better side of himself. And it's a test that, if he passes, he'll become a sort of ape Moses, and if he doesn't, he will be destroyed like Koba.
And a hero is only often as good as their villain. I mean, Woody Harrelson's fantastic in this, and he's
great, isn't he?
really channeling that kind of inner Marlon Brando as well.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, he has this kind of unpredictability and sort of glint in his eyes, which always works and serves him very well in comedy.
Yes.
And you can see in this, it really serves him well as a real kind of villain and quite a nasty character.
Yeah, he has a very... it's funny because he had so many ideas coming in. Obviously the whole concept was to humanize this character, and from the outside he looks like a monster. And then when you get closer and you reveal sort of what's going on inside of him and the circumstances that have created him and this army, you start to see that in a way they're not so different from Caesar, in ways that he's alike in ways he wouldn't want to be. He's like, oh, this is a little disturbing, a little chilling. They're in a desperate situation. And actually, everything that the Colonel says is true. You can't dismiss him easily. And what's so great about Woody is that he's so brilliant. He had so many ideas that were so good that we just wrote them into the script. I mean, it's interesting, there's a shocking moment where he kills this one ape, and it was his idea because he said, I think it's important to know that at any moment that potential exists in me. So if you'll let me do that, then from that point forward, whenever anything comes up, that potential is there. And I was like, wow, that's brilliant. But he had lots of details like that we just wrote in because he had a lot of really humanizing details for the character. So he's an incredible actor. He's amazing.
And I mean, obviously, I mean, you are a director who's always liked to work with really layered, quite nuanced characters, and often with quite sort of sometimes quite troubled characters.
Oh, that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to your next project. I mean, Batman fits that mold perfectly.
Sure.
I mean, are you really treating this as a real kind of character drama?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, to me, and you know, we haven't started working on the film at all because I've been doing this, but. That's exactly what draws me to it. And I do see a parallel in terms of the kinds of characters that Caesar and Batman are, in that they're sort of tortured souls who are struggling to find a way to do the right thing in an imperfect world. And I think, for me, it's the emotionality of these Apes films and of Caesar's story that draws me in. And I feel like there's a chance to do a very engaging, very immersive, point-of-view-driven Batman story that could be very emotional.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah,
Much
my pleasure.
appreciated.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey,